No matter how the votes split, there's an expectation among officials that Mr. Trump will claim some kind of victory on November 4th, even if the victory he claims was hijacked by fraud. If the streets then fill with outraged people, he can easily summon or prompt or encourage troublemakers among his loyalists to turn a peaceful crowd into a sea of mayhem. They might improvise on their own in sparking violence, presuming it pleases their leader. If the crowds are sufficiently large and volatile, he can claim to be justified in responding with federal powers to bring order. The FBI, meanwhile, is bracing for huge challenges. An FBI official told me, quote, "We are all hands on deck for the foreseeable future." Quote, "We've been talking to our state and local counterparts and gearing up for the expectation that it's going to be a significant law enforcement challenge for probably weeks or months." Quote, "It feels pretty terrifying." Bracing reporting in the New York Times today from deeply sourced, deeply acclaimed investigative journalist Ron Suskind. Just for a reality check here, here's how Ron Suskind describes his sources for that scary reporting. He says, quote, "I've spent the last month interviewing some 24 officials and aides, several of whom are still serving in the Trump administration. The central sources in this story are or were senior officials, mainly in jobs that require Senate confirmation. They have had regular access to the president and to briefings at the highest level." Joining us now is the reporter who got those high-ranking Trump administration officials to confide these worries, investigative journalist Ron Suskind. Ron, it's really, really nice to see you. It's been a long time, my friend.
And it's good to see you, Rachel.
You wrote that you can't know the motives that all these people had for speaking to you today, but what they told you, not just about what they're worried about, but what they're preparing for, is stark and worrying. What is your sense of why they wanted you to know this?
Well, you know, it's interesting because these are public servants in all parts of the government, and they hear what's happening on high from the White House, and they want the American people to know that they're doing everything they possibly can do to try to avert, avoid, and deter mayhem. You know, in a way, they're in the worst bind. They're doing their job, they're assessing threats, and at the same time, they're realizing that the number one threat is in the White House and what that person will do, which is the giant question mark that they're all trying to figure out. And that is a terrible bind for a public servant to be in. And so they wanted people to understand that what you're afraid of out there, we're afraid of in here too, and we're working round the clock to try to make sure that the democratic process can carry forward as intended and as it's meant to, though we are basically battling our own president.
Ron, one of the things that comes through in your reporting is the sense that the FBI might be a little bit of an anchor here, which feels like a strange thing to sort of hope for in a democracy, especially because it's the least transparent organization that we've got that's not called the CIA. Are your sources telling you that because they are trying to buck up the FBI so that the FBI cannot be misused if the president wants to? Or did you get the sense that they are reflecting a reality at the FBI, that the FBI won't allow itself to be used by this president in an improper way, no matter what they might be hearing from the Justice Department?
Rachel, the FBI is under siege, is what they're saying. They're calling out. They're saying we are under regular attack. From one side, you've got Congress wanting every document we have on the Russia investigation, on Hunter Biden, everything under the sun. On the other hand, we have the Attorney General. Remember, the FBI lives underneath the Justice Department, the Attorney General, and they're coming at us from the other direction to give deliverables to the president for political outcomes. And in the meantime, they're out there, as that quote showed you, in an enormous battle to protect the country. And some of them are saying there may be some folks who actually would rather mayhem. Mayhem could be productive in this case, depending on your political agenda. If mayhem allows you to suspend the vote, maybe undermine the validity of the in-person voting, for instance, all of a sudden, you're starting to see how incentives are colliding in the government. The FBI is waiting for Christopher Wray, their director, to be fired. And every day when they have to fulfill some request for some bit of something, evidence to use on Fox News this morning or to attack enemies of the president, they're wondering if we don't give it, will our director be fired? So they're under siege. They're holding out.
Ron Suskind, I feel like you're the go-to byline for me when it comes to presidents in trouble and presidents pushing us places that we ought to not be at this country. You've done that for previous presidents as well, but this piece today in the New York Times, the day after Election Day, is just absolutely stunning. Thank you for helping us understand it, Ron. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Rachel.
All right, we'll be